Okay, hi everybody. Today we're going to do a tutorial about Substance Designer, and we're going to make some textures that we can eventually use in our Unreal material. So starting off, we're going to use Substance Designer here. Now I am not planning what I'm going to make. You're going to see on screen our end result right now, but as it goes, we're just going to kind of work through quickly, make some sort of random texture, but my biggest thing is I want you guys to understand how things work and get a good idea so that you can make your own materials quickly and easily in this software. So let's just get started. To get started here, let's click New Substance Graph. Let's do the metallic roughness one. Click OK. I'm not going to walk through all of the functions today. This is going to be like a beginner's tutorial. You'll see this pulls up our whole deal here with all our different windows. We're going to get rid of some of these maps that it puts into our graph up here on top. So I'm zooming in with the mouse wheel. Let's just make a square around those. Delete the metallic out, delete ambient occlusion, and delete height. Because right now we're just going to work with the basics: base color, normal, and roughness. Okay? So there you go. It's a good start. Move around and pan around and hold it with the middle mouse button. Okay? So the thing, you may have heard me gush before about why I like Substance Designer a lot, and that's what we're going to go over mostly today, because otherwise this can just get so long, I'll just ramble on forever. So we're going to start with, first of all, noise maps. Noise maps are incredibly powerful, and that's what you're going to use to make the base of all of your different textures. You can search them over here down in your library on the left bottom and just type in noise. And the nice thing about that is it'll bring up a little bit larger view of each of the noises that you can use, these black and white noises. The other way you can do it is if you just tap spacebar here in your graph, and then you can look it up this way, type noise, and then you'll have a selection of your noise maps as well. This is probably going to be how we do it now, but I do encourage you to basically pull all those, as many of those in as you can, look at them, and really get a feel for what they do. They're very powerful, and I'll show you why as we go along. Let's just pull one in now. Let's pull in black and white spots. Just do that one. That's a basic one. I want you to look at these noise maps, and you can see it down here in your 2D view too, where you can zoom in and out and really get a good view. If you do click on the noise, a lot of times on the right you can see here there's this random seed button. Just click that and you can actually click through a bunch of different versions. Incredibly powerful, incredibly useful to make multiple variations and to switch up your materials when you get towards the end, because this is a non-destructive node-based system, which is really neat. One of the things you can look at too is here in your 2D view. If you zoom out a little bit by the scroll wheel and you hit this tile button, it'll tile it multiple times, and you can see, okay, well, does it tile good, does it not tile good? We're not going to get into super duper deep like does our material tile today. Mostly we're just going to make a cool looking material, but this is one way you can start off with that. We'll go into a little bit more advanced stuff in the future. So let's turn that back off so we can get the single view. Now, like I said, I want you to look at these noise maps in two different ways, and this will give you a good understanding of how you can make your own material. Now, I can throw all of this stuff in there very quick. You can follow exactly what I do, and you really won't learn a whole lot. You'll learn a little bit, but I feel like giving this explanation here, it might take a second longer, but it'll really give you a good base. So look at these noise maps as a couple different things. We're just going to focus on two right now. One is, it could be a mixing map to mix a couple colors together to create like your color map. So imagine one color is white and one color is black, and you're blending them together using this noise map. Another one is it can be used as a height map. Let's pull it down here to buy our normal stuff, where if you look at these noise maps here, white would be the high point, black would be the low point, and this would be like a height map. Okay, so these are the two ways I want you to look at these noise maps and ways you can use them. So let's To give you an example, let's just plug in this black and white spots to our normal node. What this normal node does is it takes a black and white noise and turns it into a normal map, uses it as a height map, turns it into a normal map. Now if you look now on our cube down here, you can see the bumpiness. Now if you go to our normal here, you can actually increase the intensity. So let's say we pump it up to 3, and now you can really see those bumps come out. The white points are the high points, and the dark points are the low points. And you can use those two ideas of these noise maps being a blend map or a height map, and you can do all sorts of neat things. So using that information, we're going to go through and let's just make a material. The first thing I want to do is I want to change this box down here in my render into a sphere. So let's just do that quick. And now you have our sphere. Now if you hold shift down and right drag, you can also move the light around down here. So it's basically a cube map light, but you can still get a good idea of what you're looking at. I'm making a sphere because what we're going to do with these materials is put them on spheres in Unreal when we make a new material tutorial. Okay, so let's just start making some random material, and we're going to try to just make something that looks cool more than anything else. So this normal map intensity setting over here I think is pretty good to keep around. Well, we'll bump it up maybe a little bit to like 2 or something. And let's disconnect this by just clicking on the line and deleting it. And we're going to use this black and white as a blend map, as I mentioned first. So if you hit the spacebar, now you can look up your nodes. Let's just look up a basic color one. So here's uniform color here, or you can search it by putting color in. And then you'll have your uniform color node. Let's put one of those in. Let's copy it with Control C and V. And now we have 2 uniform color nodes. And let's click on these and get some colors going. We're going to just kind of be random. I'm going to put in like a brownie. We don't want to play around too long because it's going to, we want this tutorial to go at a reasonable pace. So for this one, we'll do like a gray. Okay. And then one of the biggest nodes you're ever going to use in this software is going to be a blend node. So hit spacebar, type in blend, or here it is right there, bonk. And you're going to blend the top over the bottom. Basically, that's how it works. The top one gets blended over the bottom based on the noise map. Okay? So let's just do this color into there, this color into there, and now you see, since there's nothing going on here, the top color, since it blends completely over, it's just using basically copy and just sitting on top of the other one, and you won't see anything. But once you add this as a mask, now you can start getting a cool color. Okay? Now if you look down in our color map here, you already can see a pretty neat blending of 2 different colors. So let's maybe adjust the colors a little bit, since now we can see the result, and get it closer to like, I don't know, something appealing. Maybe something like that. That looks good for now. Maybe we'll change that later, and that's the beauty of the node-based system. So let's save this. Let's just call it tutorial. Maybe I'll lighten this just a little bit. Yeah, that's looking better. Okay. Yeah, let's lighten this a little bit too. I'm hoping not to sit here and spend a million hours just tweaking stuff because I'm goofy like that. But all right, and so now you can see we blended those 2 textures together. And if you look really close, the white is what is the top color, and the black is the bottom color. And that's how it blended these 2 together. Okay, now let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's look up another map. another noise map to make the color map a little bit more interesting. Let's do grunge map 3, maybe. That's a pretty cool looking one. Look how neat that one looks. Let's hit the random seed button on a couple times. If you zoom in, you can watch it change. Yeah, that looks good. So I think I want it to go horizontally. So let's just hit the space bar, and then we'll go to transform. And that'll open this transform 2D node, which you can click on. So in that node, in the transform 2D, go to angle here. Let's put in 90% and see how then it'll rotate it 90%. All right. So we want to kind of blend this with our original color, but I don't want to do it straight up. So what I want to do is do like an ambient occlusion. So let's put that in. We'll do RTAO, ambient occlusion. Let's just pop that in there. Now what that does is it uses this as a height map, and then it tries to do ambient occlusion, which means it shadows around the areas. If it was a height map, it would shadow around the areas where, you know, like you have your angles of ascent or descent. It makes a really neat effect. So let's put that into here. And you can see here's our like ambient occlusion attempt. So it looks really cool. Let's randomize our original grunge map a couple times. Our original one, sorry. And you'll see how everything down the chain randomizes. All of those look really neat. So, okay, so we have our ray traced ambient occlusion. Now to blend this together with our color map, we're going to need to, this is in black and white and our color's in color. So if we put in a gradient node, we can hook this into the gradient node, and you'll see how in color mode it says color or grayscale, and now this one says color, so now we can blend this together with our original. So we'll do another blend here. And remember, we blend the top over the bottom, right? So we go top over the bottom. So for the blend mode, originally we used this map to blend our two things together, but now we're going to use like a blending mode, similar to how you would do it in Photoshop, okay? So if you're familiar with Photoshop, you go to blending mode here, and like you can choose these options. And all these options will blend the two layers together in a different way. We're going to choose multiply right now. And you can see like how it like really darkens it, because multiply darkens it, multiplies the dark colors. So we'll drop this opacity down to something like that. Let's look at this in the viewport. See, now we're getting a really neat looking color map, basic color map. But that shows the power of this kind of program. Like before, making something like that would have taken forever. It would have taken absolutely forever. So that's the base right now, and then we're going to continue on. So why don't we plug that into our color now, and we'll start actually getting our material underway. So we'll just plug this straight into color. Let's move this node out of here that was there and delete that out. And now you can see somehow it went back to, now you can see it in our 3D view. Looks like a cool planet kind of, because it doesn't have a normal map or anything on it, and it has that roughness set to what we set it. So why don't we maybe change that uniform roughness color, which is down here, because it's pretty shiny right now. So let's just up that white value so it's not quite as shiny. And we'll adjust the roughness map later, but I just want to kind of get a better view. So now let's work on the normal map, which is kind of the fun map. So we're not making any real specific material here, but I just want to show you like the basics of what to get an understanding of. Test out all these noise maps. Test blending a couple different colors. Test plugging them all into the normal and seeing how it uses that height map to create a normal map. Okay? So let's just keep on kicking on because we probably need to start getting moving here because I like to ramble. So let's look up, let's make another noise map. Let's say grunge galvanic large. Let's pull that in, randomize it a couple times. So let's plug that directly into our normal map. And now you can see we're starting to get some bump on our normal map there. Okay? Now it's a little bit strong. If you look at our normal maps here in the 2D view, you'll notice it's really noisy, and we're going to fix that. But we're just going to kind of fix it along the way. So the first thing I want to do is use this to also adjust our color a little bit. So we'll do the same thing that we did last time. We'll do a ray traced ambient occlusion, or RTAO. And we'll plug that into here, and we'll get that result. And remember, in order to blend that with our color map, we do need to use a gradient map, which will switch it over from grayscale to color. We do that, and now we have that. Let's make another blend, so search out blend. And we'll blend this over the top of our color. Plug that into our thing. And let's see. Probably do another multiply, see what that looks like. And then drop it down pretty good. Okay. That's starting to look pretty nice. Now we'll have to lighten that up, but we'll do that in a little bit. I have a feeling I'll probably add a little bit more to the color map. So, okay, now that we did that, let's actually, we use the ambient occlusion of that to adjust the color. Let's actually use the map itself too to adjust the color. So let's put in another blend. Put that here. Like I said, we're kind of randomly doing this, so hopefully it looks kind of nice when we're done. So we're going to blend that over the top of this. And what was the mistake I made? The mistake I made is, see this dotted red line? The mistake is this is a black and white map I'm trying to blend, and I didn't put in that gradient map to change it into color. So let's do that. All right. Plug that into here. Plug this in. There you go. Now we're starting to look interesting. Let's move these down a little bit. Move that up. And we'll go to blend mode here. Probably do the same thing. What did I put the multiply on this at? It's pretty low. Let's put this one. We'll do another multiply probably. I don't know. I might change the blend mode depending on what it starts to look like. We want to look at it. Let's change the opacity while we're... Okay. Alright. That looks pretty good. So now, I know I'm going to need to lighten this up because see how dark it is. So let's put in a spacebar and let's put in a levels. Just like Photoshop. Plug in, bunk, bunk. Now we have our levels. Now if you want to lighten using levels, you can just pull this white handle down here. Or you can pull the black handle up. The difference is when you pull the black handle up, you'll see you kind of lose the contrast. When you pull this one down, you keep the contrast, but maybe you don't, like maybe you want a little bit of not of the contrast and a little bit off. So you can kind of adjust it the way you want, and I'm basing it off of what I see in the view. Okay? So that's more the color that we want. That's great. Okay, so now we have our color done. And you can also see we're getting a little bit of a bump here in our material viewer. Not necessarily perfect, but we're getting there. So let's try to really make this interesting. So far, I mean, maybe this is okay, but like let's really try to make it interesting. Let's look up another noise map. And this time, I want something kind of crazy. Let's do this grunge map 5 here. Okay. And let me just show you, well, I want to have it horizontal, so we'll do transform. Plug that into here. Put 90% in for the angle here, and it'll flip it 90%. So now let's just see what that looks like if we plug that directly into our normal. Okay, yeah, now we're getting more of what I want. So you see, that's a cool effect. And I do recommend throwing a lot of different things into the normal map generator and to see kind of the results that you can get out of that. So what I want to do now is, maybe this is a tiny bit too clean. So I'm not going to get too deep into the really complicated stuff. We're already getting pretty far into the video, and we've already made a pretty cool looking thing. But let's do a warp. And let's just pop in a warp. And we'll put in this as our input. So let's do our warp, and let's look up noises again. Let's find a good one to use to warp that. What is fractal sum? Let's use fractal sum. Pop that in. Take a look at the result. Okay, yeah, that's kind of a cool result along the edges. Let's turn the intensity down though. And you can just barely do it. And it'll add a little bit of warping using that noise map. Now if we plug that in, it'll just add a little bit of more realistic warping on that very plain noise. Okay? So again, warp node, very powerful. You're going to want to use it. So now what we want to do is we want to blend that galvanized material with this so that we can get our kind of final bump map, right? So just look at, now here's what we got. It's starting to look pretty cool, right? I mean, I didn't know what we were going to get, but here we are. So hit a space bar, hit blend again, and we're going to blend this one over the top of this one, and then we're going to plug those into there, and we're going to just do this one. I might actually do a different blending mode. Let's just do overlay. Okay. I'll kind of put them both together. You can see our normal, and you'll notice it's kind of what we want, but it's very, almost a little bit too blown out, because what it's doing is it's intensifying the normal for one thing, for both things, and we only really want, I'm going to even turn it up a little bit more, maybe something like that. And if you look in here, it kind of is making it crazy for the galvanized normal map. So let's fix that. You can go back in here. So let's put in a levels. And that way we can make the height map less varied. It'll kind of shrink it down into itself, right? Let's put it in there and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so we don't want the height map to be so pushing out so heavily as it is right now. So we'll just pull these two handles together, and you see how it'll like make it less contrast. You take away the contrast, right? And you can see how now it's very basic. Let's run that straight into there and see if that fixes it. And you can see already that normal map isn't quite as crazy, but it's still a little crazy. So and this is a big, it might not seem like a big deal in this software, but when you get it into engines, if you have normal maps that are that kind of wild, you'll get a lot of artifacting in your materials, and you don't want that. So you want to kind of like balance what looks cool in this program, but having a good understanding of what's going to look good in another program. So let's add one more node here. Let's add a blur and input that into that. And now in the blur, you see it just basically blurred it to nothing, but we'll turn the intensity way down. But what you could do is you zoom into this normal map here, right? And then you click on our blur and you zoom into the normal map, and you can see when I turn the intensity, it takes that craziness out of the normal map a little bit. So like maybe like right there. It still adds a little bit of the bumpiness from that height map, but it also gets rid of that really contrasty, stark normal map. So let's save that. All right, so here's our material. It actually looks pretty cool. What would that be? I don't know, worn wood or something like that. I guess we made like a stylized worn wood. Let's save that. There's a couple things that we still need to do, but I want to kind of kick through them because I'm sure this is going way super duper long now. One of the things we need to do is I want to add this, a little bit of the ambient occlusion from this map here to our color map, right? So we'll add that in. So let's add another RTAO, and let's pump that into there. You can see how crazy that does. And remember, we have to make a gradient map if we're going to put those two things together. So bonk. And then we'll need to fit in another blend up here at the top. And we'll blend this over the top of our color map before we send it into levels, because I want to do levels at the end of it, right? So now you can see it's getting kind of messy, so there we go. You can see this blended over that. Let's do a multiply blending option here over in the right again. Knock this down. Let's go look at in our material view. You can see when you add it in, it'll deepen the cracks. See, and then you can lessen them here. So you can always look at your results. And I think that looks pretty good. We can look at our leveled out version of the color map. That is such an impressive. I'm not saying that I did an impressive job. It's impressive that this software can make these cool kind of color maps. It used to be that you try to remove shadows from like real photo material to try to get cool color maps, and this just does it on its own. So shrink that down. We have one more node to worry about, and that's the roughness map, and we're going to just use the color map to determine our roughness map. And you can do this a million ways, and I'll go over this kind of stuff in the future too, but we're getting low on time here. So I'm going to use our color map, but we're going to turn it into a grayscale. So we search out grayscale conversion here. Let's pop our color map into there. Now you can see it turns at grayscale. Now with roughness map, the dark is the shiny and the light is the rough, more rough. So I want to flip this around because I want to make the higher parts or the lighter parts shiny. Okay, so that we'll do a invert grayscale, and we'll go zip, and now that changes that. Let's get rid of this uniform color for our roughness, and let's just pump this in and see what happens. And you can see it's very rough now. If you put in a levels and you pop it in, now you can adjust this levels to adjust how rough your roughness map is. Let's pull this up a little bit so you can see. So if I adjust the levels, you can see things now get shiny as I kind of move the different sliders around. I can move this one up, that'll make it less shiny. I can make the whole thing shiny. by making it less contrasty like that. So let's just do something relatively reasonable. And hopefully that, I mean, really, when you start tweaking like this, you have to start understanding that you're going to get it into your engine, and your engine isn't going to have the exact same lighting that you're getting from your modeling package. So you're going to have to do some adjustment. You might have to do some adjustments in your engine too. But there's our roughness map. So we'll make it a little bit shiny. Hold shift, move our thing around. Let's actually bring it full screen. And there you go. That's our material. So hopefully that was clear enough on how to use the noise mask. And like I said before, I would test out using the noise maps and mixing a couple colors together, and then test out using the noise maps by plugging them into the normal map and seeing how it makes the bump, how it takes a height map and makes a bump. So other than that, that's where we're going to call this done. I appreciate you watching this. This was kind of free-flowing and probably long. I appreciate you making it all the way through. And I think if you did and you watch this, you'll have a better understanding of how to use Substance going forward. Now, there's a ton of nodes we didn't touch on, but we can do that in the future. And this was a beginner's one, and I feel like with the information that I gave you in this one, you can make just about any material if you start using your imagination with those noise maps. And one thing I do want to say right before I leave is, if you want, you can go back to any of these original maps, these noise maps, and randomize them now. It's non-destructive. So like, we can change our thing. You can click it and it'll make a million different ones, and you can look at how it changes there in the viewport. We can do that for each of the different noise maps we did. Change where the colors are positioned. Like if we change the black and white spots here, you can change that. You can change this one up here, the grunge map, and it'll change your material. So it's really neat. Stuff like this would have taken forever to make out of photo material, and then when you were done, you'd have no ability to easily edit it, and you can easily edit it with this node-based system. So again, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time. I hope you have a great day, and have a good one.